NutriCast.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
Only by me spending time and learning and connecting and understanding those individuals do I understand the best way for me to influence them.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. The purpose of this podcast is to build a world with better bosses, and we do that by learning from the greatest minds in leadership today. Whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, you're going to get practical advice to help you along your leadership journey. Today's episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, Cadre of Men, and Pharaoh Skincare. Check out my show notes for the links to our sponsors and my books. Now, today we're exploring the power of influence with my guest, John Marvin. As leadership expert John Maxwell famously said, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. True leadership isn't about titles or authority. It's about the ability to inspire and impact others. My guest today knows this firsthand. As a seasoned CEO, John has spent decades mastering the art of influence, leading teams, and driving results. If you want to elevate your leadership game, understanding influence is essential. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by John Marvin. John is a visionary entrepreneur, acclaimed columnist, and influential leader dedicated to empowering others to unlock their full potential. He is president and CEO of Texas State Optical, where he has cultivated a thriving business network while spearheading initiatives in health and wellness consulting and eye care partnerships. John has spent years studying the transformative power of mindset and the inner game in achieving success. And I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his experience. So, John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, and I'm interested in hearing your story and the things that you've learned throughout your leadership career. But tell us a little bit about your journey. What has been your personal growth story?
Well, a lot of it has come as a result of kind of what I would call failure. And learning how to respond to that. I've been blessed over the course of my life and career to have influence that many people have influenced me. At the time, sometimes I didn't recognize the value of their influence, but there are nuggets that kind of positioned in my mind. And later, as I faced adversity or some type of challenge, they would be there. They would recall, and so. But I think that the real personal growth that I went through was, first of all, intentional. I'm a big believer that personal growth has to be intentional. You're not able to just naturally grow. You can naturally age, but you won't naturally grow without intention. And for me personally, that intention became important in my early 50s. And so it was, while I felt like I had learned a lot in those earlier years, starting off out of school and taking that first job and knowing ambition will take you a certain way. But until you really sit down and start becoming intentional about your life plans and what it's going to take to grow and develop and what you want to accomplish, you really won't begin to fully realize potential. And the last thing I would add is that it never ends. I mean, continual learning is something, and continual growth is something that you have to commit to for life. And once you do, there's a liberation that comes with that because you begin to believe that the you really do have the best ahead of you because you become better each year that passes. I mean, I approach this year with an excitement, and I'm not worried about anything. I don't subscribe to fear at all, and so it has come as a result of both having to face adversity and challenge people that have influenced me, but it really came together when I sat down and became intentional about it.
I really like what you're talking about there because I think that many of us, I know I found this to be the case with me. I got out of the military, took a corporate job, and then I was sort of just drifting. I was earning money, and but I didn't really have a plan. And at least for me, I struggled because in the Navy I had a mission. I knew what I knew what I was put on earth to do. But when I got out, I was a little bit lost, and it took me a while to find my true north and really be intentional about what I wanted to do with my career and the things I wanted to do. So I imagine we have listeners on here who are thinking, who are hearing this, like, and saying, wow, maybe I'm not being intentional about my career. Maybe I am just floating through the day. So was there a point that you what was the point for you? What made you sort of begin to get intentional about personal growth?
Well, it was a book that I read. I am a student of John Maxwell, and he came out with a book on personal growth. And I heard him speak. The book had just been published. I didn't own a copy of it, but I heard him speak about it, as oftentimes authors will kind of go on much like promoting a movie, they'll go out and promote a book. And in this particular presentation, he spoke about the elements of his book, and it just resonated with me. And so I bought the book and I read it, and then I read it again, and I began to really kind of understand in a much deeper way kind of what I needed to do for myself. And so I buy several copies of that book, and I give them to people, as I because I know what it did for me, and I don't think that I'm unique in any way. I think there are a lot of people that have all the great intentions. They got a lot of ambition, but they just don't know quite how to focus it and how to direct it. And this book helped me better understand what I needed to do that.
That's fantastic, and I think it's interesting how each of us have a spark at some point in there, and it might be listening to a podcast, it might be reading a book, it might be listening to a speaker, or hearing something on the news that just sort of sparks our growth journey. And so for you, it was this book and hearing it on a podcast, and again, that's why it's so important that we have these podcasts so that listeners, this is really critical. You're listening to a podcast and you're going to learn something here that maybe it's going to be the spark for your journey. So I love that part of it. I mentioned that I teach college. I've got a new class I just started up this week, and it's seniors. And it's their senior capstone class, and it's in business strategy. And one of my students asked me, he said, asked him, I said, what do you want to learn from me as a career leader, not necessarily academic? What do you hope to learn from me? And he said, what do I need to do in my career to be able to advance, to be able to move forward? And so I was going to ask you, like, what's really important about achievement and success that really people need to understand, and what do people maybe misunderstand about that?
Well, first of all, I think that That's a great question. But I think that for me, as I reflect back on kind of my own experience, the most difficult part of becoming successful, whatever way we want to define that, is you personally defining that for yourself.
Mm.
What you really want your life to be. What is it that you really want that is worth you committing your entire life to accomplishing? And that's a difficult thing. I just recently had a conversation with my 17-year-old grandson who is just had finished his first semester of his senior year. And we were talking about what his plans are after he graduates from high school. And he said, I really don't know,
Mm.
and I can relate to that. I mean, I probably was not probably, I was in a similar situation. I really didn't know. I knew kind of what I didn't want to do, but I really wasn't sure about what I did want to do. And so we had a conversation about that, and I was trying to explain to him that whether or not you go to college or not should depend on what it is you want to do, because not necessarily is it the best for everyone to just go to college out of high school. If what you want to do would benefit from having a college education, then yes, and now you should select the school that's going to best prepare you for what you want to do. If you want to be a real estate agent, for instance, you don't have to go to college to do that. You can go straight out of high school into that profession, find someone you can learn from, somewhat like an apprentice relationship. On the other hand, if you want to be a cardiovascular surgeon, then probably college is going to be a good idea. And I said, what you have to do first is figure out what it is you want to do. And that's the most difficult part. And I think that so many people end up pursuing careers that are really the desire of someone else in their life, whether it be a parent or a spouse or somebody that wants something for you, which is okay, but it'll never give you the kind of drive and determination to accomplish what it is unless it comes from you and something, like I said, you're willing to dedicate your life to. And that's the most difficult aspect of doing that, is defining what success is.
Mm.
Then once you do that, then you'll find that the rest of it begins to unfold. Because as a friend of mine who his career, his profession is leading expeditions to the top of Mount Everest. And so when I was talking to him, I just asked him the question, how in the world do you learn? Because there's a lot involved. You just don't show up in Nepal and say, I think I'm going to go to the top. There's a lot involved in it. And I said, how do you learn how to do that? And he said, there's only one way to learn how to climb mountains, and that is climbing mountains. And so once you decide you want to climb a particular mountain, you've got to start. And by climbing your own mountain, you'll learn all of those things that you worry about or concern yourselves with. You will learn those things as you go once you get started in a direction. And it has to be something that you have a passion for, and it's something you're willing to commit your life to doing.
I think is a really important point. And I think today, what I get a sense of is your choices for careers seems a lot more vast than when I was coming up through high school, right? And I think young people do have a struggle with that. It's like there's so many directions to go, right? And where do I want to commit my life to? But if you don't set a direction, if you don't put the sails up and point the rudder in the right direction, you're never going to get to your destination. So at some point you have to make a decision. Okay, this is the direction I'm heading. And even though you might change in down the road, but at least you should have some sort of direction to where you're heading, right? So that okay, I need to start climbing mountains because this is what I'm going to be doing, right?
Yeah. That's and no one sits down. Well, I won't say no one. Don't want to speak in absolutes. I'm sure as soon as I say that, somebody go, I did. But very few people sit down at the age of 17 and know specifically what it is they want to do. So to say to somebody, well, you need to decide, I think is right, but there's a need for more instruction in terms of how they go about doing that. And one of the things that I think is extremely important is self-reflection and time thinking about it. And it's so easy, whether you're 17 or 67, it's so easy to get so busy that you don't take the time to reflect. And it's through that reflection do you begin to understand yourself. And through understanding of yourself, you'll have a better ability to determine what it is that really is your passion and what drives you. And I encouraged him. I said, I don't care if it's grab a backpack and a tent and go out and just spend a weekend by yourself in a park someplace, or find some place you can go to where you can spend time with yourself, because through that you'll better understand yourself. And that, some people, that's a very difficult thing because they are uncomfortable with themselves. They feel much better if they're surrounded by others and they're constantly distracted from thinking about these types of things. And so I do think that that's important. I think it's important even for me today. I plan my day so that I have a daily time every morning of personal reflection. And it may not be about what I did yesterday and what I'm going to do today. It may just be about what my weeks, the last few weeks, have looked like in my life, and whether or not I feel like I'm congruent in my desire and my vision for what I want for myself. I went through an exercise of outlining and writing a personal vision statement about 4 years ago. I'd heard about it for years, had a semblance of it, but I hadn't really spent the time to doing that. And I looked at it just before the first of the year, and I had to determine whether or not that still remained my vision statement. And if it did, in general, do I need to tweak it? Do I need to fine tune it? Do I need to put more definition in it? And so I think that one, it's an ongoing process, but you've got to sit down and begin to really contemplate it, think about it, and then constantly revisit that to make sure that you stay congruent with the mission, so to speak.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Cadre of Men. Leadership is a people business, and for men, real growth happens alongside those who challenge and inspire you. Cadre of Men is your force multiplier, helping you achieve more strength, deeper connections, and a stronger sense of purpose. I'm proud to call myself a member of this dynamic group. Cadre of Men is built for men who refuse to settle. With dedicated forums covering fitness, fatherhood, business, and more, we provide the tools and camaraderie to help you thrive. Our weekly Zoom calls dive into tough, real-world topics, often featuring expert guest speakers who will push you to sharpen your skills and mindset. Monthly meetups include intense hikes and hands-on building sessions where you forge bonds through shared challenges. From fitness and finance challenges to mastering public speaking, Cadre of Men delivers actionable curriculum in leadership, business, and personal growth. If you're ready to step up, push past your comfort zone, and lead by example, Cadre of Men is for you. Inside the Cadre, we grow together, lead together, and rise together. Visit cadreofmen.com to learn more and take the first step toward becoming your best self. This episode is brought to you by Pharaoh Skincare. I would have never imagined I'd be talking about skincare, but this stuff is truly amazing. Pharaoh is revolutionizing skincare by replacing harmful chemicals with natural ingredients sourced from regenerative farms. Now, weightlifting is tough on the hands, and Pharaoh's Epic Dermis is the best product I've ever used to get my callous hands back to normal and stay in the game. Now I use it every day. Pharaoh also works to reduce fine lines, wrinkles, and improve overall skin health. As Pharaoh CEO Charles Mayfield likes to say, a little Pharaoh goes a long way. Deep Leadership Podcast listeners can save 15% off all of their products by using the code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at pharaoh.life. That's FARROW.life. This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com.
A strong host game needs a strong wing game. Add Popeye's wings to your game day spread, and the crew won't just be cheering, they'll be salivating. With 8 bold, crispy Louisiana flavors to satisfy everyone's taste buds, our wing game is strong enough to always get you the W. At $5.99 for a 6-piece, order bone-in or boneless for your next watch party. Someone just wrapped up the title of Most Valuable Host.
Have that chicken from Popeyes.
At participating U.S. restaurants, price may vary, tax extra.
I think I just won my taxes.
Yeah?
I just switched to H&R Block in about 1 minute. All I had to do was drag and drop last year's return into H&R Block, and bam, my information is automatically there.
So I don't have to go digging around for all my old papers to switch?
Nope.
Sounds like we just leveled up our tax game.
Switching to H&R Block is easy. Just drag and drop your last return. It's better with Block.
I want to switch over a little bit to the leadership side. You know, you have a lot of leadership experience. I often say that leadership is a people business. And so one of the questions I have for you is like, how do you lead when you have a diverse organization, people of different ages, different backgrounds, different experience levels? What would some advice would you give to our young leaders that are listening in as to like the best way to lead a diverse organization?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I'm a big student of John Maxwell's, and John Maxwell defines leadership as influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so if you I think about it in terms of a team, and I've got a team that reports directly to me. And part of my job is not only to lead that team and the corporate mission that we have, but also to help provide an environment where they can grow and they can develop as leaders themselves, because each of them have a team of their own that they are to lead. And so one of the things that I'm very conscious of is the responsibility of modeling the type of leadership that I believe in. So I believe in influence, that leadership is influence, but I don't think that how you influence those on my team is the same across the board. Everyone's different. Everybody has different skill sets. And so only by me spending time and learning and connecting and understanding those individuals do I understand the best way for me to influence them. And that requires communication skills. And that is another area that that requires focused effort to learn. And so you got to sit down with each one of them. It's much, this may sound a little cliche, and some people who are listening may not yet understand what I'm going to say, but it's a lot like parenting children. Not that these on my team are children, but in the fact that if you have more than one child, you realize that no two children are exactly alike, even if they're growing up in the same family. I have 6 children, and I can tell you I got 6 different children. And if I tried to treat and interact with all of them the exact same way, I would never be effective as a father. And so only by understanding each of them am I able to uh, provide leadership for my team. And that takes time, and it takes effort and energy to connect with them. And the most ineffective way is to rely totally on a title. And just because I'm your boss, you ought to listen to me. Now, if anything, that may be a good reason they're not listening to you, is because of the way that you're acting as their boss. So I think it's really important to understand each individual and the most effective way to influence them.
Yeah, I love that. I often say you can't lead people you don't know, but I didn't really take that to the next level, which is you can't. It's really the answer to that is you can't influence people you don't know, right? You can't
Mm-hmm.
because each person is influenced differently. As an officer on a submarine, I had some sailors who needed a kick in the backside, right? And there's other sailors that needed encouragement, and there's others that needed support. Unless I knew that sailor and how they reacted to different ways to motivate them, I wouldn't know how to lead them. And each one of my sailors were different, and they reacted differently to my influence. So each one had a customized influence plan, if you will, to try to get them to be the best, to be able to become the best versions of themselves. And I needed to act in different ways to each individual.
And effective leadership is understanding that to the point you practice it all the time.
Yeah.
And it really, of course, trust is a big part of that. But you can't expect people to just trust you on their own. They have to trust you. Um, you have to demonstrate to them that you can be trusted. And a lot of times that is taking the risk of trusting them first.
Mm.
And there's a risk in that. And as a leader in an organization, it requires this type of influence. Leadership requires vulnerability. And if you're not willing to allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you won't be effective. Now, being vulnerable is not the same as being reckless. Once someone demonstrates to me that they've taken advantage of the trust I've extended or the vulnerability, then I'm foolish if I allow that to grow. But to initiate, I do believe that everyone deserves that to begin with. You deserve it until you until you prove otherwise that you don't deserve it. And the people who don't deserve it, they will reveal themselves very quickly in the process. And so it isn't a matter of having to wait years and years. You'll find that out pretty quickly. And unless you address it at the get-go, then you're communicating something to the rest of your team that you don't want to communicate. In other words, if you let John get away with something, you're telling the others that I'm not serious.
Mm.
It's not that they want to get away with something. They know now they can't trust me because I've said one thing and I'm doing something different. So the trust factor is very important in having influence. But that goes back to getting to know the person and treating them individually. There's some people I'm sure that your own experience has had that you can more quickly establish trust with than others. And you just have to, and the way you determine that is you know them.
Mm.
You spend the time to know them.
Yeah. And you bring up a really interesting point. When it comes to leadership, every eye is on you. So your actions or inactions are observed by everyone, right? And so, and they're sending more important messages than your actual words. So they're watching what you do. If you say one thing but do something different for a particular employee, everyone sees it and everyone knows it. And so now you've established your standards, right?
That's right.
Actions. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can't let the weakest among the team set the standards for everyone.
Yes.
You have to set the standards and not allow them to. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your business, Texas State Optical. Tell us about it, and what do people probably maybe they might not understand about the eye care industry?
well, Texas State Optical is a network of independent private practice optometrists. The company, the brand, was first established in 1936 in Beaumont, Texas, which is in the far southeast corner of Texas, about 70 miles from the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America. I hear in the news today that that's in discussion, but from the Gulf of Mexico. And their four brothers started the company, and they took advantage of the oil boom that was going on in Southeast Texas at the time. And they grew this organization to over 300 um, locations. And at that time, they owned all of them themselves. And then through some changes in Texas optometry law, they were forced to divest themselves. And it has evolved since the mid 70s into what it is today, which is a network of independent businesses who license the brand from the corporation. So we have very little direct operational control. All of our operational uh, involvement is through influence.
Yeah.
We have to. One of the things that I've learned over time is it's far more difficult to lead a volunteer organization than it is one that's not, because nobody has to listen to you. And you're only able to establish and lead that type of a group when you actually demonstrate that you're worth listening to. And no one, like I said, there's not a requirement. So we're not involved we don't dictate anything operationally. Um, we are protective of our brand value because that's the only asset we have. And we make our income by licensing its value to other people. But we do so through consultation, through leadership and encouragement. And keep in mind, our network is made up of young optometrists. I'm talking about 28, 29, 31, 32, early 30s, who have decided that they would like to own their own practice. They quickly understand and realize that they really don't have any idea how to do that. And so we provide that guidance and direction. And I've developed this turnkey system for a young OD to come in and say, I'd like to own my own business. And we can say, okay, here's what you do first. Here's what you do next. And if you'll follow our recipe, then we're confident we can predict what you'll do your first year, third year, and fifth year. And so we're really helping young optometrists kind of live their dreams of private practice ownership under a very reputable, well-established, and credible brand name, which is what appeals to them about joining us, is that instant credibility they get by licensing and operating under our brand.
I love that. So you're basically, you've got young entrepreneurs that you're advising, supporting, and encouraging along the way. So I absolutely love that. And you touched on something I think that we should stress here on the show is you say it's harder to lead a volunteer organization than when everybody directly reports to you or indirectly reports to you. And you touched on something that's really important, the idea that influence is very critical in one of those roles where you don't have direct authority over somebody else. And I think that's one of the most difficult jobs I ever had. Was I was a division quality manager for a large company, and I was responsible for quality for the division, but nobody worked for me in the various plants. So it was all about influence, and it was one of the hardest leadership jobs I had because I didn't have the people that were responsible for quality didn't work for me. And so, like you said, it's you have to spend a lot of time getting to know people and building rapport and and finding what's going to motivate them. And so that's where influence plays a big part when you're not leading based on rank or, your title. You're doing it based on, your personality and how you interact with people.
Yeah, and while our customers are private practice optometrists, while they recognize their um, inability to operate and their lack of knowledge to do so, you have to protect their egos in this sense. And if you walk in and basically dismiss them as a bunch of idiots, of course you got to listen to me, then they won't. And so the only way to be effective is to spend time with them, learn what their real dream is, and why do you want to own a business? And listen to that. And if you don't really understand it, ask some questions about it. And through that, they begin to understand that you really are sincere in your desire to help them accomplish, so that later when you say, let me give you some advice, here's the way you should go, they're willing to consider that. Otherwise, they'll say to me or anybody else, why should I listen to you? You've never owned an optometry practice. And they're right, I haven't. So I have to be able to connect with them and demonstrate my sincerity. And sometimes the best way for me to connect with them is to use a third party. Because if I know this particular doctor needs help in a certain area, my best ability to influence them is to talk to another doctor who I know does really well in that certain area and put those two together. And, I think it was Ronald Reagan. It may not have been his original, but he said, there's no limit to what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. and I really had believed that. And so me getting a third party, another doctor to come in and help this person, they're directly it's them, the other doctor who's influenced them and helped them. But at the end of the day, it was I that brought those two together.
Yeah.
And so there's an acknowledgement that there's a role for me to play. I don't have to know everything. I used to tell my daughter when she was like 6 and 7, she would ask me a question and I would answer her, and she says, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Because I'm your dad and I know everything." And she says, "No, you don't." I said, "You're right. I don't know everything, but I know a guy who knows people that could tell me what I need to know." And it's really that simple, If I'm trying to influence you, I'm limited in my ability because of the profession we're in. So it's best if I use other people to help create that influence. And knowing when to do that and when that's necessary and not being stubborn and just saying, no, I know what I'm talking about. And sometimes I'm right. I know I'm right, but I know that I won't be as effective in conveying that or influencing that person as I would be if I bring in another party.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Is that sometimes it's best to know when to redirect, right? And the goal is to get the job done, and sometimes it's not through yourself; it's through others. And I love that you have the humility to be able to say, "All right, I think probably the best is for that person to hear it from someone in their, who's a little further along in the journey than they are."
Well, and the importance of networking, that's kind of cliche these days. But networking to me is not a matter of looking for people who can do things for you, looking for relationships you can create that at some point down the road, I might be able to help them and they might be able to help me. But it's not I need a job next Monday, so I need to go to a networking event. It's really about getting to know people and building this large circle of friends and acquaintances so that at some point I say, hey, I know somebody that's got some expertise in that area. Let me put the two of you together. So,
I love that. Such an important point. So build a network of people that you know. Not people that you're trying to get something out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, John. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
I think the message I think is most important is for an audience like yours is get started. Don't wait till you've got all the questions answered and got everything lined up perfectly. Just get started because, as I mentioned earlier about climbing mountains, you're only going to learn and create your career. It is something you're going to have to create by getting started in it, and you'll figure things out as you go. I probably spent way too much time trying to plan everything when I should have acted sooner and became much more implementing the little plan that I did have, because plans change. Goals don't, objectives don't, but plans can change. And so my advice is just get started. Start tomorrow, today, with doing something that'll take you closer to where you want to be. And that will lead to the next thing and the next thing. And pretty soon you'll find that you've put together kind of a tapestry, if you would, of experiences that ultimately create this career for yourself.
Oh, it's such powerful advice. I love that. Don't just think about it. Don't just write about it. Don't just plan. Actually move forward. Start moving forward and learn along the way. I love that advice. John, how can our listeners find out more about you and your business?
Well, I'm more than happy to have as much conversation with anybody in your audience that's interested. I, like you, have a passion to try to help, and if some of my experience can be helpful, I'm more than happy to share it. There's nothing I'm not closed off or closed vested. Probably the easiest way to reach me is through our website, tso.com. That's TSO as in Texas State Optical.com. Go to the contact section and just write in there that you listened to this podcast and you'd like for me to reply, and I'll respond to you. And if the opportunity creates itself, we can get on a Zoom meeting or in a phone call, and I'd be happy to help. So that's probably the easiest way to reach me.
That's fantastic. And we're going to put a link in the show notes for that resource. And again, listeners, if something really stood out from our conversation today and you want to ask John some more questions, reach out to him, ask him some questions. Say you heard him on the show and that he said something that sort of sparked an idea in your mind and you want to talk to him, reach out to him. He wants to help. I want to help. And so again, these are, we bring guests on the show who are powerful resources for you to help you be the best leader that you possibly can be. So take advantage of these resources. So, and especially for John and all of his experiences, things that he's done. So, well, John, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing all of your experience and your knowledge, and you've given us a lot to think about today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you as well. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey guys, it's Miriam Love here, and I want to share something very special with you. Check out my new release, All In, the Spanish remixes, out now on Electric House Records. And always remember, be love, share love, all love.
Available now wherever you listen to music.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks. What did you do on your last Saturday night?
Did you hear something?
Toilet paper.
There's none. Nada. The reserves have gone dry.
People are hoarding it. I should have done that.
They're all out of hand sanitizer at my Target.
Mark, when did you last watch the news?
We are getting reports of forced quarantines in China, Japan, and now Italy.
You're cutting onions in half and putting them around your apartment.
Yes, exactly. It kills the COVID.
Excuse me?
Let's go. Let's go. Get in.
Vamos, rápido.
Have you ever driven one of these?
Never.
I'll drive, ladies.
I've got the keys.
Excuse me, I'm lost. I'm looking for my wife. I got turned around.
Join me, Eric Roberts, Jennifer Elise Cox, and Ed Asner for The Last Saturday Night, an Electrocast podcast. You'll love it. Electrocast.